All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the quarterly travel information meeting, February 2022. It's good to have you all back. So just a couple housekeeping things like usual. So just as a reminder, we will be sending out these slides and the recording after the meeting. So if you have anyone who couldn't attend or you need to drop off early, anything like that, just know that it is recorded. We send that out as a YouTube link via the listserv, so you can expect that to come out. You should send it, 1 or 2 business days after the meeting, and it'll be via the listserv that you heard about the announcement for the meeting. So that's the first thing. For Q&A format, if you have any questions, feel free to ask those throughout the presentation. If the question relates to the content that we are presenting at that moment, we will answer those, after we present the slide, is usually how we handle it. If you have any kind of more general questions, maybe unrelated to what we're presenting on, maybe like department, some more specific department questions, or, questions related to compliance, like those sorts of things, those we typically hold off until later in the presentation. So that's how we like to handle the Q&A. And yeah, now I'll take a moment to introduce my team. So I'm joined by April Berger within travel as well. And then we are headed up by Teresa Athen, who's the assistant director who oversees travel, as well as the procurement customer service team. So Teresa will be joining us as well. And later, we plan on having Ben Sommers will be joining us, and he will be presenting on he's the global travel security manager within the Office of Global Affairs, and he'll be presenting some information on travel registration, travel insurance, and travel waivers. So if you're interested to hear in that content, that will be after we do the travel services content. So that will come a bit later. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And I will pass it off to April, who will be starting us off on the travel content.
Actually, before we get started, Kelly, we got someone requesting closed captioning on for this presentation. I'm unsure if we do that or how we do that on the Zoom bar. Do you know? Before I get started?
I don't know off the top of my head. I will definitely take a look into it while you start presenting, see if I can get it to turn on.
Okay.
If anyone knows, so we are using the Zoom webinar add-on, which is a little bit different than the typical Zoom platform. But if anyone is aware of how I can change that within Zoom, let me know. But I'll look into it for sure. Thanks for letting me know.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to get started. Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. So if you attended our previous travel information meeting, we had mentioned that we would be launching a travel agency page on our website. The page is now fully set up and it's live. We were originally going to announce it via listserv, but there were some delays in getting the website ready. So it just turned out that we're just going to be launching it and sharing it via this travel information meeting. But we have grouped our travel agency page and our vendor discount page under our book and pay section. So it's really easy to access. And I'm actually going to go ahead and share that with you real quickly by going to our website. Just give me one moment here. Okay, and assuming that you can all see the travel services homepage, so there's 2 main ways to get to the book and pay section. One is by going to the travel planning menu and then going to the drop down book and pay for travel, or you can use our quick links button for book and pay. And then just know that this is protected by a net ID, because obviously we do not want anyone from the public to be able to access some of our contracted agreements and rates. So you must log in with the net ID and password. So you can either access them via the anchors, which will drop you down to the section on the website, or just a simple scroll down and they are right here. So if you click on the travel agencies, this is the new site. It has all of our contracted travel agencies. And then if you click on one, they're all set up a little bit differently. For corporate travel management, they provide step-by-step instructions on how to get signed up, contact information, whereas let's say Key Travel, theirs is a PDF which has all of the information on how to get set up and contact information as well. So we're really excited to have this kind of cleaned up and just easier to navigate. We get a lot of questions on who our contracted travel agencies are. So this is just an easy way to see it and be able to know how to sign up with one of them. Okay, so now I'm going to get back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so Ariba scanning policy. So for those of you who may have seen through campus newsletters, the UW Records Management Office has done this initiative. It's called Fetch the Future, Rethink the Ink. And essentially it is to navigate with COVID and everyone having to work remotely, it's made people rethink the paper process. And with that, they've created this initiative. And in working with them with regards to this initiative, we touched upon the Ariba scanning policy. So if your department uses Ariba as the source of truth to hold all of the expense documentation, it must meet records management requirements for their scanning policy. There are essentially three elements to the scanning policy for Ariba. One are technical scanning requirements, quality control, image enhancement. I list them here on the slide, but there are actually more specific details for each of the three requirements in terms of, like, for example, quality control. Is the image blurred? Is the ink too light? Image enhancement, sometimes the image is really small. It needs to be enlarged and saved in that size. So there's all these different requirements. One thing I would like to point out, that if you are unable to meet these requirements, that's okay. It is just recommended that you retain the original paper record for the full retention period. But I wanted to bring this up because, as most of you know, I do review the high risk ERs, and sometimes when I review the documentation, I know that it is not meeting these Ariba scanning requirements. Sometimes it's really small. I would never deny an expense report because of that, but it is because I don't know if your department is choosing to keep paper documentation, but it is something that I thought would be beneficial to kind of be a refresher for everybody that is processing reimbursements, that if you are using Ariba as your source of truth, it does need to meet these scanning requirements. I think maybe going forward, if I do see that the attachments don't meet these requirements, I won't necessarily deny the expense report, but I may add a comment saying, hey, this was really difficult to read. You might want to reconsider reattaching a document that does meet the requirements. But I would never deny, but just as a friendly reminder to all of you. And then if you wanted to find out what are the details within each of these requirements, you can access it two ways. One is from the records management website, and we have the link provided here. And also in our receipts section under our records retention subsection, we have a link out to this records management scanning policy link. So we do have it on our website. We do let you know that it does need to meet records management's requirements if you are using it as your source of truth. And then just as a plug, if your department is looking into going paperless or clearing out a lot of your paper documentation that you have, I recommend that if you are looking to create a scanning policy that's not specifically for Ariba, but for your department in general, I recommend reaching out to UW Records Management. They do consultations, they work with departments all the time. So if you're interested in that, there's their email address. So I see a couple of questions. And okay, so when Tangerine Agency contacted, they quote the same prices we find online on our own. Where are the discounts referred to? How do we access those? So I would just make sure that you are letting them know that you are from the University of Washington. And I don't have the breakdown of the rates with me on hand, so I can't speak to them specifically. But I would just make sure to let them know that you are from the University of Washington and that there should be discounted rates. But I could always also get back to you regarding that.
Yeah, I'll kind of jump on that one too. So kind of like you mentioned, it is possible for, when you're working with Tangerine that you would find, the same rates as if you're searching on your own. Because yeah, we do have the certain contracts, but obviously those, contracts have certain requirements or they're not always available based on certain, scenarios and things like that. So, but the Tangerine has been communicated with. We have sent them all of our contracts, so they should have them on hand. And for any like the details, and if you're wondering if a discount was applied, if you just kind of work with them or ask them directly, they should be able to let you know. It should be all stored in-house within the Tangerine agents and all that.
And then another question was, the original meeting about the pros and cons of each travel agency was a while ago. Cost comparison for services was also there. Yeah, so it really also, some of these agencies have created customizable experiences for departments in terms of portals and things like that. So it really depends on what your department needs are and what you are asking the travel agency to provide. Each of those elements has different pricing models. So it would require you to reach out and find out what the cost comparisons are. I do believe that we still have those recordings on our website when we had each of the agencies presented. Kelly, I don't know if you could see on our website. I don't know if they're listed under important updates or.
I think so yeah, I think Buzzy's talking about the travel agency Expo. I don't think we couldn't actually post the recordings because of
That's right.
the competitive nature. So it's something we wanted to do, but it's just because of the sort of sensitive competitive nature of the content. We decided that we just kind of realized we couldn't move forward on doing a recording. So that's why they're not posted. But like April mentioned, to get the kind of detailed information, you'll need to kind of reach out to the agencies, but they should be able to pretty quickly if you just reach out to whoever our account manager is and just ask for like a pricing sheet. It's usually pretty easy for them to send that over to you.
Thank you, Kelly, for reminding me about that. So another question is, direct travel still a preferred travel agent? We've never had a formal contract agreement with direct travel. They could potentially have been a Washington State contracted travel agency. I'm unsure if they still are, but if you go to our travel agency page that I showed you earlier, there is a link that links out to all the Washington State contracted travel agencies. We are able to piggyback off of the Washington State contract and use those agencies and their rates. It might require us collaborating with them to get our rates loaded. But that is something that can be done. It just requires communication with that specific travel agency. Okay, another question. I'm a little confused on the role of Ariba when we switch over to utilizing Workday FT in 2023. How is Ariba playing a part in the Ariba scanning policy? So when we go to Workday, Ariba will go away. So right now I'm just speaking to the scanning policy for Ariba as we currently use it. Obviously, there will likely be an update to the policy that is specific to Workday, but that's something that we can't speak to because that's a records management policy. But I would assume it's along the same lines, a similar policy for Workday. But like I said, in terms of detailed requirements, it could be very different. I know that Workday does have like a mobile app, which Ariba really doesn't. So this is just specific to Ariba right now as we use it.
And I think a lot of that is just kind of like to be determined too. It's very much a part of like records management and just like the UW finance transformation project in general. So we haven't heard like a whole lot of information on that content, and it's not really our content, so we couldn't really speak to it anyways. But that would be very much kind of like to be determined and more information to come on how they're going to handle all the scanning and document transfers and all that kind of stuff. To be determined on that for sure.
Another question, we have been working with an agent at Direct Travel. Do we need to switch to one of the agents listed on the website? No. All of our travel booking is, in a sense, decentralized, which means it's not mandated. So you can use whatever travel agency you'd like. These are just agencies that have won a bid. We did an RFP, or I should say an RFQ to create a pool. So these agencies were vetted, and so they just have a formal contract. But you are able to use other agencies. You are able to use other third-party vendors to book travel. For international travel, is there a travel agency partner you would recommend working with? So with regards to our contracted travel agencies, all of them have experience with international travel. With regards to, actually, we have Ben here from the global, the Office of Global Affairs, sorry. And so he could also elaborate on some partners that you can utilize for international travel, but as it pertains to travel agencies, they all have experience and expertise in international travel. And then there is one more question, but I will save that for a later time for Kelly. So back to the slides. So one thing that I think I kind of noticed as a trend is we, put together the content for our travel information meetings is that the theme has always been, we do a lot of customer service questions, and oftentimes it comes in waves in terms of customer service topics. So what I thought would be beneficial is moving forward for travel info meetings is that we have a topic that we focus on. It's usually a question that comes across to us a lot, whether through email or phone. And the biggest one right now is COVID tests. So a lot of countries for international travel do require COVID tests upon entry and then also re-entry into the US. So the question is, are COVID tests reimbursable? And the answer is, well, it's dependent on the business. So if it's required for business, if the traveler can't, conduct business and go on this trip without having the COVID test, then it obviously would be allowable. So we discussed as a team, we re-reviewed our Ariba process and what is the best way to get this expense reimbursed. And we actually are going to recommend using the non-incidental supply line item. We were considering using the immunization line item, but one, it's not really an immunization. And then two, if you use that line item, it does require approval. And so with COVID tests, we didn't think that it needed approval. So we think that using the non-incidental supply line item is the best line item to use to reimburse that expense. Also be aware that this expense does require receipt documentation. And that's really a non-negotiable. Non-incidental supplies always require a receipt unless it's a part of that exception list, and COVID tests are not a part of that exception list. So just make sure that the traveler gets receipt documentation. We have seen a lot, because it's mainly for international travel, we see a lot of foreign receipt documentation. So just make sure that you're meeting our receipt documentation requirements, in which there's a currency conversion, and if there needs to be any wording that needs converting, that is also being done as well as a part of your receipt documentation attachment. And let's see.
I can go ahead and answer this question real quick.
Sure.
So question is, will you be discussing travel insurance if we need to cancel flights, hotels, et cetera, for you to travel outside the US? I believe you're talking about like when you can purchase a travel insurance, like as an add-on to like a flight and stuff like that. So in general, those are actually not a reimbursable cost. So that question has been coming up pretty frequently for COVID also. And the reason for that is our travelers are protected under our change cancellation of travel plans policy. So purchasing those third-party travel insurances are not reimbursable, but the traveler themselves is protected under the change cancellation of travel plans policy. There's a lot of known issues with those third-party travel insurance providers. It's usually very difficult to actually collect back on them because the actual like circumstances and everything like that it's very difficult. So that's one of the reasons that it's not allowed. And then our travelers are protected under that policy. So if they do need to cancel a flight for any of those reasons that's listed on our change cancellation of travel plans policy, they would get reimbursed. That's why they don't need to purchase those insurances. And if it's due, and like you mentioned, if it's canceled due to COVID, that's definitely one of the reasons, or that reason fits under the policy. So they would be eligible for, whatever they can't collect back and all that. I will send a link to everyone to that policy so you know what I'm talking about.
And additionally, not to throw Ben out there because, I can't speak to everything that he'll be presenting on, but potentially maybe he could speak to this question as it relates to travelers that are registered with the Office of Global Affairs. So maybe Ben, if you could notate that. And that looks like that's it for questions on the content I presented. So I'm going to go ahead and pass things off.
So I'm going to go ahead and get mine situated. Just give me a moment. All right, should be able to see my PowerPoint now. So thank you, April. So now I'll move on to my content. First thing that I want to present on is just some expense report COVID analysis. The last time I did showed you guys some data was related to kind of like the negative impact of COVID, how kind of drastically the travel space had been hit as far as, how much money we were spending and reimbursing on travel. So this go around, wanted to make it a little more optimistic. So we have seen some pretty substantial upward trends in the travel reimbursement space. So just want to kind of do a little dive into that and kind of show you what that's been looking like. So kind of that first, year after COVID, we only saw, obviously COVID's still going on, but like what the kind of the thick of it, we did see some like kind of light trends moving up. But starting in around August of 2021, kind of moving into the fall up until current is when we've really started to see some substantial increases. So like in August, we had, around 400,000 increase. In October, it kind of bumped up to another 600,000. And how we compared it was from the previous year. So August 2021 versus August 2020, September 2021 versus September 2020, and so forth. So yeah, around October, we got a nice kind of 500,000 increase. And then in November and December, it was getting close to an 800,000 increase. And then this past January, we still had another about 620,000 increase. So just some kind of optimistic, kind of nice things to see that, people are moving around again, which is nice. see, do I have any questions? So I want to make sure I address this. So for records management purposes, do we attach the agenda in Ariba, or do we keep on file for the entire rental period, not to include with the expense report? For the agenda, are you talking about a conference agenda? So not exactly sure if that's what you're talking about, but I believe maybe my team can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have the option that you can attach the expense report or keep that on file at the department. So for meeting and conferences, okay. But maybe if April has a chance, you can kind of double check the policy from the website. But I believe we mentioned that it's that one you can keep on file or attached to Ariba. Okay, so yeah, that's some of the trends, and definitely just something that's nice to see that things are starting to move again. We've definitely seen also like an increase, just kind of like in general, like customer service. Our ER reviews have started to go up again now that there's been more expense reports and more reviews. We can just kind of tell by just the way people are communicating with us and that things are starting to move again. So just want to kind of spread a little bit of optimism in the travel space for you. So we just recently added a new page to our travel page. So we, over the last several months, we've been collaborating quite a bit with the UW Sustainability Office. We got a kind of an active sort of project team where we've been connecting with them. And one thing that they worked on was creating a page in the travel sustainability space. And that page is now complete. And so we added it to our website. So there is included a little screenshot and also the direct link as well. So we went ahead and put it under our resources dropdown on the homepage. It's the last one, travel sustainability. And so it just includes a lot of information about, the UW Sustainability Office and kind of what their initiatives are related to professional travel reduction. So if you're interested to kind of learn more about that, what the university is doing in the travel sustainability space, definitely go check out that page as well. We also have it included in our important updates section on the homepage. So if you scroll down to the important updates, there's a little announcement there that we're going to add related to the travel sustainability. So we'll include a link there. So yeah, just make sure you share that with folks. And if you're interested in learning more, be sure to check that out. So that's that. And you may have seen I'm sure a lot of you saw the communication yesterday, but my last day in travel will be February 11th, 2022. So I have accepted a position over in finance transformation. I will be supporting the operating model team. So definitely some mixed emotions on this one. I'm definitely going to miss travel a lot. It's been really, really great working with all of you. So thank you all for the great memories. Just a huge, special shout out to my team. It's been awesome working with April and Teresa over the years. And so I'm definitely going to miss them a lot. We have a really great team dynamic. And I was looking back, when I started. So I started in August of 2016. So it's about a 5.5-year run. So yeah, I've been with travel for quite a while, and I have nothing but great things to say about my team and working with all of you. Made a lot of friends, and always brings a lot of joy to my work. So thank you all for all the great memories. And one of the questions was related to if I'm going to be supporting travel. So I definitely will be supporting travel to in at least some capacity. So the operating model team is going to be, very much in charge of like the kind of customer service model for the university. In my position, we'll be supporting directly finance and procurement. And since travel falls under finance and procurement, I'll definitely still be working with the travel team moving forward. And a lot of it's kind of up in the air, sort of the tasks or projects I'll be taking on as things progress within finance transformation. But I am very, very excited about the opportunity. So definitely honored that they're, going to be taking me on. And yeah, hopefully, all the things you all have taught me and I've learned over the years, I can translate over, and looking forward to bringing all that knowledge over to the finance transformation team.
To kind of piggyback, I'm definitely going to miss Kelly. He's been a great mentor. He's taught me so much. Training or travel is not very straightforward, and there's a lot of nuances, and he's always been so patient with me, and I feel like we've just been a good balance and complementary partners. So he will be missed.
Thank you, April.
I don't know if you wanted to say a few more words, Kelly, or I wanted to loop back to that one question you had with regards to conference agendas.
Yeah, I think I'll just say a couple more things, but yeah, I appreciate the shout out. It's definitely had a really great team dynamic, and super confident in your ability to take on everything in travel. And also just a super special shout out to Teresa. So I've been with Teresa the whole time, and she's been very, very supportive. And I can confidently say she's the best boss I've ever had. So definitely going to miss her a lot as well. But again, bittersweet, also very, excited about the opportunity. So it's a mixture of, sad and miss, but also looking back fondly on all the great memories and excitement about what's to come. So thank you all.
Thank you, Kelly. I was about to say something. Now you're going to make me cry.
Sorry.
It's okay. No, I think it shows that we definitely have a great team. We had definitely have a good dynamic, and we'll try to continue to live up to Kelly's reputation and continue to do that great support, but it will be hard. We will miss you a lot, and we've really enjoyed having you on the team. And we will not let you get away without reaching out and saying, hey. Often,
yeah,
so.
I'll stay in touch, man. Yeah.
Oh, don't worry. I'll be emailing you with questions all the time.
And I'm not going too far. What I do, specifically what I'm going to be working on, relates to finance and procurement. So I will be very much still involved with the travel space. So looking forward to that as well. And also, I've received a lot of, thank yous from all of you with the notice that we sent out yesterday. So thank you to everyone. And I do plan on responding. Just got quite a few to get through. So if you haven't got a response from me yet, I apologize, but I promise I'll get to you. So thank you all so much. And yeah, I think you can jump in on that question now.
Oh, okay. So the question was, for records management purposes, do we attach the agenda in Ariba, or do we keep on file for the entire retention period and not include with the expense report? It depends on how you're using the agenda. So if it's essentially a part of your pre-trip approval, we do not require pre-trip approval documentation to be attached to Ariba. But say if you are using the conference hotel exception, you would need to attach the agenda to Ariba to show that it was the location of the conference, and that it meets that 5-mile vicinity clause. And then let's see. And then real quickly, with regards to the travel insurance question, Ben has so graciously dropped in a link and some information in the chat, so make sure to check that out. And then another question is, this may have already been addressed, but is a vaccine card for proof of being fully vaccinated required for out-of-state travel for airlines or other transit? Would this be considered a requirement for booster shots at any point? I would probably say no, because whenever we make this determination, we look at the expense and analyze it. Is it just for business, or is it something that potentially is used for business and for personal? Oftentimes when it's for both, we say no, because it cannot be clearly distinguished that this would not benefit the traveler for personal use. So yes, if they were to get vaccinated and it would benefit them for personal use, then it's usually a no. Obviously, for immunizations or vaccinations when they go internationally, that is because they are going to that location specifically for business and they need this, it's required. Whereas, you know, if they're here in the US, that immunization or booster doesn't help them here in the US. It is specifically for that international location for business. Is there any kind of comparison chart for the 4 contracted agencies to show the benefits and featured services they can provide? I know there were several meetings a while ago, but it would be really helpful to have some kind of comparison chart that shows the benefits and features that each offers. We don't have one. That is something that we can look into. I'm unsure if we can really do that, because like Kelly mentioned previously, there is a sense of a competitive nature. And so I'm not sure it would be appropriate for us to come out with that kind of document. But it is something that we can take back and maybe think about as to just maybe some general information that we can provide to all of you. Another question, conference organizer in Canada told my grad student he was going to be required to have a letter from the UW granting permission for him to cross the border into Canada. Any idea where to get that? Ooh, this sounds like it could potentially be a question for Ben. So I'm going to hold off on answering that question, and we will get back to that question. Kelly, I'm not sure if you wanted to pass things off.
Yeah, I think we're at that point for sure. So, introduced him briefly before, but we have Ben Sommers joining us today. He is the Global Travel Security Manager over in the Office of Global Affairs. And yeah, I'll pass it on to him, and he's got some good content for us.
Thanks, Kelly, and the rest of the travel services team. And I really appreciate the invite and getting a chance to share a little bit about what we do in OGA and a little bit about my role specifically. I am going to pull up a few slides here. All right. Okay, so hopefully you can all see those. So again, my name is Ben Sommers. I'm the Global Travel Security Manager here at UW, and my office is housed in Gerberding within the Office of Global Affairs. Going to talk a little bit about international travel today. So we are, for quite some time now, back in actively traveling, getting out and around the world. We have had faculty, staff, other academic personnel out in the world for quite some time. And we have our first large cohort of undergraduate study abroad students currently overseas as of winter quarter. Around 300 students at this point, and that number is going to rise to around 350 in the next month or so. And then looking forward to spring and summer and fall. We're expecting similar numbers across those quarters as well. So it's a very exciting time and also kind of a weird and unique time to have students and faculty, staff, folks around the world, lots of moving parts and pieces. And our office is trying to be a bit of a home base for some of those questions and helping to guide and support travelers through what is an extremely complicated travel landscape at this point. But as you all know, the UW's global footprint is quite significant. We have partnerships and programs in over 130 countries. We have each year, and these numbers vary somewhat year to year, around 2,500 UW students who are studying abroad in some form, and also are the number 5 producer of Peace Corps volunteers. And I'm sure some of you may have seen in US News Best Global Universities ranking, we are number 7. So there is a significant amount of international travel that happens at UW each day. And we're really excited to see those numbers growing and the international travel space kind of coming back to life after a couple of years of kind of needing to kind of be a little bit static. So specifically, global travel security focuses on a few core areas that are here on the slide. I'm going to today focus mainly on travel registration and the travel waiver process within travel registration, as well as share a bit about insurance and also emergency support for travelers while they're overseas. As you can see here, our mission is about facilitating safe and successful global travel for UW students and employees. And I work closely with the UW Study Abroad office to support undergraduate travelers. And in the few months that I've been in my position, really one of the most interesting things has been to see all the different forms that international travel can take, and slowly kind of getting up to speed a bit about the unique kinds of support that different types of travelers require. So you are all probably aware that there are international travel restrictions currently in place in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I've pulled out a few notable parts of that travel restriction policy here. The first one being that all international official UW travel overseas must be registered. And official really means that travel is being funded or supported or sponsored or administered by the university. So personal travel, for personal reasons, does not need to be registered, but we're really talking about travel for the purposes of representing the university in some form. Travel waivers are part of this travel registration process. So when traveling to what is considered a high-risk area at this time, which is most of the world at this point, you are prompted to submit a travel waiver. One quick note on travel waivers: when it comes to group travel, we are not expecting each individual within a group, so for example, an undergraduate study abroad program, to fill out individual travel waivers, but are doing that in batches or groups. We base our definition of high risk, low risk on the US Department of State's travel advisory system, which I'm sure many of you are well aware of. And I'll talk a little bit more about that specifically later. But for right now, all travel to level 4 countries, regardless of the type of traveler, will prompt a traveler to complete a travel waiver. For undergraduate and graduate students going overseas, they also are required to do a travel waiver for travel to level 3 countries. Because the State Department travel advisories are so closely linked to the CDC's health advisories, we are seeing most of the world being at a level 4 right now. The CDC makes their determinations based on a combination of case numbers, I'm speaking specifically about COVID, and also testing capacity. So the vast majority of Western and Northern Europe right now is level 4, a good chunk of Africa, and much of Central Asia and East Asia as well. Undergraduate exchange programs are all approved by UW Study Abroad. So those kind of live separately from individual international travel. And I wanted to share a little bit about something you may be hearing. Everybody needs more acronyms in their life, but ITRASC, so the International Travel Risk Assessment and Safety Committee, is a group of university leaders who are making recommendations to the provost regarding international travel policies. So international travel policies are born out of ITRASC, this committee. Those recommendations are sent to the provost for approval, and there's certainly a feedback loop between those two entities. ITRASC is also involved to some degree in reviewing travel waivers to high-risk countries. Most of those travel waivers go through our office and are reviewed by me, but for travel to particularly complex or high-risk areas for reasons outside of COVID, those end up in front of ITRASC. Additionally, ITRASC reviews individual undergraduate travel waivers as well. So registering travel, the travel registry lives on the OGA website. There's a travel registry page. I've shared the link there. And this is what it looks like. You are asked to register based on your status at the university and the type of travel you're doing. So for students, they are presented really with two options, curricular and non-curricular activities. Non-curricular is referred to as TRIP, curricular as independent learning. Study abroad programs live separately from this. They are registering in a different space. And for faculty and staff, it's really about just registering for official travel, individual travel, or if a faculty member, for example, is leading a group of students somewhere, there is a student tour option as well. And registering triggers a different process depending on the type of travel you're doing. But step one is to be on the travel registry page, select the type of travel, and that kicks you into the Teradata travel registration system. Once you are in that travel registration system, that's where the travel waiver comes into play. And so Buzzy, your question in the Q&A around documentation for approving international travel to Canada, I think the travel waiver approval would serve as that documentation. An important thing to note about this is when you're registering travel, you are asked to complete a certain number of required documents based on the type of travel you're doing. So if you're a faculty member just traveling for a conference, you really just share emergency contacts, and that's the extent of it. If you're a student doing graduate research toward your dissertation, there is a much more kind of extensive paperwork process that is triggered. The travel waiver is one of those documentation steps. So if it's required, if the country meets that threshold, level 3 or 4 for students, level 4 for faculty or staff, that is an automatic trigger in the system. So in your kind of checklist of to-dos, you will see a travel waiver there. Open it up, there's a few questions, and depending how those questions are answered, it may trigger additional questions. But it's a quite straightforward process, and it's consistent for the most part, traveler to traveler, destination to destination. Travel waivers are then, once it's submitted, kicked over to our office. The vast majority are reviewed by myself, as well as ITRASC and the provost in some instances, because again, for travel to particularly tricky or complex places, necessarily involving ITRASC and the provost can take some time. So turnaround time for reviewing and approving travel waivers can be anywhere from a couple of weeks to a month. But most of them, I would say just ballpark 90%, can be turned around within a few days. Once a travel waiver is approved, the traveler gets an email message from our office saying your travel has been approved. Here are some recommendations for international travel. And again, so Buzzy, for your question, that approval email that explicitly says your travel has been approved can hopefully serve the purposes of supporting documentation for that traveler. If you have questions about any of this, or if you have questions, any of the travelers you support in your departments or units have questions, you can always reach out to Travel Emergency at UW with questions, and there's a GTS page on the OGA site as well where you can find more information. This whole travel waiver review process is very much anchored in the State Department travel advisory system and will likely continue to be so. We hope to eventually be jumping on an exit ramp off of these types of processes and systems, and kind of get back to a business as usual place in the coming months. I see a couple of questions coming up here. So for, I'm sorry if I butcher your name, Aramie, about information regarding level of countries. So the best place to go for this is the travel advisories page on the State Department's website. So if you just Google State Department travel advisories, there is a country by country breakdown where you can read more specifically about why a country is at a certain advisory level. For this moment in time, because of the State Department and CDC so closely link their international travel advisories, most of the world, because of elevated case counts, are at a level 4. So yeah, the vast majority of international travel right now will prompt a travel waiver. But it is a quite, it's an abbreviated process for travel to countries that are level 4 solely due to COVID. So again, State Department Travel Advisory website for the most up-to-date information. And they update on Mondays and Tuesdays typically. Okay. Marianne, your question about for international travel, non-UW coming to the US to speak at a UW event, that traveler does not need to be registered. So this is really only for UW travelers traveling overseas. Even if you are, you have a grant, a project within a grant, and have partner researchers from other universities who may be collaborating with you on a project and you're traveling internationally together, only the UW travelers need to be registered through this system. Carol, your question, do all students who go on international travel need to register? It's really based on the distinction of if they're traveling for official travel. So if they're traveling in a UW capacity, then they need to register. If they're just going on holiday with their family, they don't need to register. John, can you have blanket travel waivers for sets of staff, such as department directors and managers for specific countries, or is this per international round trip? So blanket travel waivers are, it's a good question. It is something that we are doing for undergraduate study abroad right now. And there's also some discussion around whether or not the travel restrictions can be eased back a little bit as case numbers start to decline, and a lot of countries are kind of just stuck with their advisory level because of case numbers, although the situation in that country doesn't prevent significant medical risk. So as of right now, the answer is really no. It is processed individually for every international trip, and depending on a destination. So we have some faculty who are traveling 3 times in a month to 3 different destinations, and that is essentially three different travel registrations. Although it is possible as well to, in your travel registration, create an itinerary of different destinations within one travel registration. Monica, your question about the travel waiver page. So travel waivers themselves really are part of the registration process. So no one will be prompted to fill out a travel waiver until they've registered. So once you register, then the travel waiver to do kind of comes up on your checklist. And then that's the point in which the point at which you would fill out a travel waiver. There is information on the OGA page, and I will find a link to share in just a moment that outlines a little bit more about travel waivers specifically. Stephanie, was foreign travel registration required pre-COVID, and do you anticipate foreign travel registration being required post-COVID? So this is a conversation that happens very much above my pay grade. Foreign travel registration was required pre-COVID, and the hope is that it will continue to be required post-COVID. I'll share a little bit more about why registration is important in the next couple of slides, but it was required for certain groups of travelers, for student travel, for faculty and staff travel, less so, unless, again, going to a high-risk destination that needed a little bit more examination. What system oversight or other is there to ensure that traveler is registered and a waiver is in place? Love that question, Lisa. There really isn't one. We hope that travelers are registering. I'll share a little bit more about why it's important in the coming slides, but there really isn't a way to catch travelers who catch may be the wrong word, but I guess to identify travelers who are not registering. For students, it is much more, especially ones who are participating in formal study abroad programs. There really is, it's built into the system of signing up or applying for one of those programs. For faculty and staff, it really does, I think, depend somewhat on the communication that happens within units and kind of how deeply embedded travel registration is within their travel planning processes. So it's kind of a long-term project for helping to guide potential travelers to register their travel. But yeah, hopefully it's something that all of you can take back to your units and make sure that your international travelers are aware of. Carol, again, the State Department travel advisories are on the State Department's website, specifically travel.state.gov, I think is the address. All right, I will continue on with these slides, and I know I'm moving through this very quickly. So if you have questions, please do feel free to put them in the Q&A. So a bit about insurance, and this is one of those reasons why registration is important, particularly for students. So registration will prompt students to purchase student abroad insurance, and this is a requirement for all students who are traveling overseas. We use CISI as our insurance provider, and it is medical evacuation coverage, and there are very significant coverage ceilings for these policies. So they're very good policies, and it's quite cheap for students, so $1.74 a day. One important note here is that for faculty and staff who are traveling, there's blanket coverage. So, you know, worst case scenario, we are not aware that a faculty member travels somewhere, they would still have their coverage if something were to happen. But our role in providing direct support to a traveler is hindered somewhat by a traveler not registering. There's just a lot of going back and catching up that needs to be done if a traveler hasn't registered and ends up in an emergency situation. So again, part of registration is for situational awareness. So we know where our travelers are around the world. We can proactively reach out to share information that may impact them while they're overseas. As an example of this, a rather recent example, I think it was Thanksgiving Day when we first started to learn about the emergence of Omicron. And very quickly thereafter, entry restrictions were being thrown up for travelers from 7 countries in Southern Africa. We had several travelers in Southern Africa at that time. They needed to be contacted and made aware that entry restrictions were changing and it may have implications on their return travel to the US or wherever they were going next in their travel. There are oftentimes other very rapidly evolving situations, whether it's a demonstration that maybe has turned violent in a place where we have a traveler, a natural disaster, you name it, any type of emergency situation where we would need to get in touch with our travelers overseas with immediacy. We think in terms of extremes, evacuating travelers as well. All of that happens it's initiated by us knowing where our travelers are. So registration is a key part of that. Back to insurance, again, medical evacuation coverage. It does include evacuations for natural disasters or for political crises, and does include as well emergency medical evacuation. So it has some components that are specific to international travel emergencies. Something new as of this year is there's also up to $2,000 of trip delay coverage. So, you know, standard trip disruptions, things like canceled flights, et cetera, but also for disruptions related to COVID. So one of the ways in which this could potentially play out is if a traveler is trying to return from overseas to the US. As we all know, you need to take a COVID test within 1 calendar day of returning and return a negative test. So we expect that we will have travelers return positive tests and need to extend their travel overseas. Those costs would be covered under this trip delay coverage up to $2,000 or $150 a day. So that's new coverage that was added to our insurance policy this year, and it is included in both the student and the faculty and staff coverage. So all international travelers who are registered and have this insurance coverage can use that benefit. There are emergency numbers there to connect with insurance to help identify providers, to help start claims processes, and this information can be found also on the OGA website. And then finally, the last thing I wanted to share with this group is just a reminder about some of the emergency assistance services that are available to registered travelers. Again, this kind of goes back to the importance of registration. So there is a 24/7 emergency line, and that is answered by UW PD, and they act as essentially a switchboard, take down some information, and then immediately contact myself or one of 7 other on-call duty officers who can then follow up with travelers in cases of emergencies. One thing to emphasize to travelers in your units is that in a situation where they feel like they are in imminent danger, of course, call local emergency services first. There is very little we can do from the many thousands of miles away that we are from international travelers. So we want to just remind travelers that local emergencies services will be the ones who will be able to provide immediate assistance. But we do want to be brought into the loop with other overseas emergencies, especially ones that may necessitate intervention from our end when it comes to evacuations or, in some cases, helping to move along insurance processes, et cetera. And then just sharing again for non-emergency questions, I can be reached at travelemergency@uw.edu. And yeah, that's it from me. I do see there's a few more questions, and feel free to share anything else in the Q&A. So from John, can we ask that OGA be on the routing in Ariba for lodging meal per diem reimbursements to document the international travel compliance was followed? I am not sure if I'm the one to answer that question. I think from our end, one of the things that we can ensure or can help with compliance anyway is that travel waiver issuance. So when a travel waiver is submitted and approved, again, that automated email is sent out indicating that travel has been approved, and therefore, the traveler falling into compliance with the international travel regulations. So that's one thing I think we can offer. And of course, if there are questions within a department or a unit that we can help clarify, or if we can help support a traveler with reimbursement processes, we're more than happy to do that. Kelly, did you have something to?
Yeah, I was just kind of jump in, just piggyback off what you said. So yeah, reaching out directly to the Office of Global Affairs will be the resource when it comes to those things. I don't think at this time we'd be able to move forward with any sort of Ariba changes. Ariba changes in general are very much a standstill because of finance transformation and moving into Workday and all that. So yeah, but the Office of Global Affairs is always open to communication. So reaching out to them for any support would be your best bet for that.
Great. Okay, well, thank you all so much. And again, a big thank you to Travel Services for extending the invite. And just a quick note to Kelly. Kelly, wish you all the best. Good luck in your kind of next chapter. And yeah, I'm sure you'll do great.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
So let's see. So yeah, so if anybody still has questions, we'll definitely be sticking around. It looks like we got a couple more that are trickling through. But that's it that we have for kind of like the main content. But yeah, let's go ahead and keep moving on the questions. I work for KUOW.org. I'm trying to encourage our employees to use the travel services for domestic trips. Do you have a quick training tutorial to start this process? So as far as, just kind of getting with started with any of the services that we provide, I think just kind of starting with our homepage on the website is a good place to start. We do have, if you're looking for training opportunities, so if you need any training on how to use our systems, so for travel reimbursement or the policy, we do offer trainings for that that are free to employees. So if you go to our homepage, you can check out our training page. Is a good place to start with kind of the services, and then just kind of the general other things that we provide and services. Our homepage is can be a good resource for that. Let me go ahead and link our homepage to everyone in the chat, so you have a direct link to that if you want to go check it out. I was told years ago when we booked with Christopher and some business travel, trips will link to the Office of Global Affairs. Is that still the case? Yeah, that is the case. So they CBT has their kind of own duty of care type system. And I believe that information still filters into the Office of Global Affairs. If what I'm saying is incorrect, Ben, please jump in on that. That was set up, and I believe it's continued. It's still set up, but if anything's different or has changed, let me know.
Is that for just general international travel? And I'm thinking it may be linked, if anything, to Teradata, the travel registration system.
I believe that's what it's linked to. I think maybe Teresa has some more information. You're muted, Teresa.
It's correct. It's Teradata. It sends a feed.
Great.
And yeah, it looks like the rest is some thank yous. So yeah, thank you all very much for attending. And like I mentioned, yeah, we'll be sticking around for a few more minutes if you have any pressing questions. Yeah, appreciate all the thank yous and the good lucks on the new position. And like I mentioned in the beginning of the meeting, this was recorded. We will be sending out the slides. So if you have any folks in your units that you'd like to share the content with, the recording will be sent out. We'll probably get it out in the next couple of business days or so, and that'll come out via the listserv like usual. And that'll be a PDF copy of the slides and the YouTube recording. Next time, can you enable live captioning? Yeah, so my apologies for not having that set up yet. Something that's that we've just learned about. So we will make sure to get that all set. When I was looking at it, it didn't look like there was any way to get it live and up and running on this meeting. We would have had to cancel the whole meeting and refresh it thing, which obviously wouldn't have worked for this one. So, but we did look at the settings, and we made a note for the next meeting on our travel webinar feature and all that. We'll go enable that for next time. So thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Hi, Pat. Your question around the travel registration link going to study abroad, it does appear that way. It is the right place. You are in the right place. That's the right link. We've thought a little bit about needing to redesign that because we do get a lot of am I in the right place? It says study abroad types of questions, but can confirm that if that is the right place, and good to know that another person is unsure. That's helpful feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, May. I appreciate it. Looks like we're getting to now. I'm going to go ahead and close the meeting. Thank you all again for attending. We'll get that recording out as soon as we can. Bye, everyone.